If you're a budding data analyst, you're probably trying your best to develop your SQL, Python, or Tableau skills. But don't forget about Excel, because it can be a very important part of your toolkit. And in particular, I'm going to talk you through the 3 main skills you'll need to master to really succeed. You want to know what they are? Let's get straight into it. So the first tool you really need if you're a data analyst in Excel is how to use data tables. So data tables are a really useful tool for structuring and organizing your data. So here we have some sales data for different companies. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this into a table. There's a number of ways of doing that. If I just select any cell within here, and then if I go to Insert and then Table, and I can use the shortcut key, which is Control and T. Once I've done that, it will automatically select the data within the table, and it recognized here that my table has headers. So I want to include those headers, and I just say OK to that. The first thing you'll notice is that the format has changed, and I get the alternate kind of blue and white lines, which make it easier to read the data and are quite useful. And when I insert one of those lines, the formatting is kept consistent, so I can see it's added in an extra blue line there. Select any cell within the table, and then when I scroll down, we can see that the headers still remain at the top. So I'm always able to see the top. It almost like freezes the panes of the data. Now, one of the best features with tables is that when I can add an extra column, it will automatically calculate for all of the rows within the table. So even if the table was 100,000 lines long, this formula would spill all the way down. So let's give you an example. If I was to go in and equals my quantity, and when I select my quantity, what's really useful is it just gives me the quantity column, which is easy to read. And if I multiply that by my price column and hit return, you can see that that formula spills all the way down for our table. So I can rename that at the top and so on. Now what I can do also is if I wanted to change the formula within here, so let's say I just wanted that to be multiplied by 0.9 and hit return, and you can see that the formula carries all the way down. If we want to reference any of these columns here and sum it up, what we can do is equals sum, and just select the column, just one cell within the column that I want to sum up, and if I control and spacebar, that will select the whole column within the data and hit return. In this formula here, you can see what it's doing is it's referencing up table 3 and quantity. So this is table 3, which isn't a very useful name. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change that. So select anywhere within the table, go up to the top of the ribbon, table design, then across to the left hand side. And what I'm going to do is rename this table 3, and I'm just going to call this table sales and hit return. And if I go back into my formula across the right, then you can see that's quite easy and nice to read. So it's my table sales and it's my quantity column. I'm just summing all of the data in here. So you can see that tables really, really useful. It'll save you a hell of a lot of time. And if you're a data analyst, it's a real skill that you need to know about. So the second tool you're going to really need to use if you're a data analyst is Power Query. So Power Query is just an awesome way of cleaning, transforming, and really just getting data into better shape. If you work with any kind of data at all, you'll know that quite often you will get bad data or data that's inconsistent, and you'll need to use some kind of a method to get consistency and structure to that data. So we have our table here. To use Power Query, all we need to do is just go up to the top of the ribbon, go to Data, and then just across on the left hand side under these options here, get data. So what's really useful is we can get it from a file, we can get it from all different places. Now I have a separate video on Power Query, and I'll link that up on the top of the screen, in particular where you take 4 or 5 files from a folder and then you can combine and transform that data. So it really is an awesome tool. For the moment, for this example, all we're going to do is we're just going to take it from table range. So just make sure my table is selected from table range. That'll open up the Power Query editor here. Now, lots of options up the top here, but just on the right hand side, these are a couple of important points here. So when we apply all of our steps, so what we're going to do is we're going to just basically clean this data up a little bit, add a few extra columns, and all of those steps will be recorded here on the right hand side, so that when we add new data in the future, all of those steps will be applied to that new data as well. So it's a really efficient way, and it can automate a lot of your data without a complicated macro. So what we're going to do firstly is we're going to take this email column, and what I want to do is I want to separate out the names from this email. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this column. So we'll go to add column and then duplicate column. That will place it on the right hand side of my table here. Then I'm going to select the entire column, go back to home, and then in the middle of the ribbon here, I'm going to split by delimiter. Now you can see I've got various options for how I want to split data, but I'm just going to use delimiter for the moment. Now the first area I'm going to split the data with is at the @ in the middle of the email. So if I just go OK to that, there we can see that splits out the email at the @ function, and I'm split between my names and then my businesses. Now I don't want that email, the rest of that, so I simply select that column and I can just go remove that column. And then for this particular column, again, I want to split that column, but I want to split it at the dot. So I choose delimiter, custom, and just make sure there's a dot in there, and then hit OK. And we can see that that has split between the two names here. And down along the side, you can see all of those steps just being recorded as I go along. So I'm just going to change the name of these columns. Select both of the columns by just using the Shift key. I'm just going to move these over to the left, drop them in there. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is on this loyalty scheme, what I want to do is I want to drop in another column, but I want to apply percentages for each of these loyalty schemes. So what I'm going to do is go to the top of the ribbon, add column, and then just below add column, there's a conditional column. We want to call this column, let's just call it, and what we want to do is the loyalty scheme, when that equals, let's say A, we want a 10% discount. We want to add a clause. So when the loyalty scheme equals B, let's call that 7%. And then when the loyalty scheme equals C, let's call that 5%. Else, so just to scoop up any remaining loyalty schemes, let's put those in at 0 and then hit OK. And we can see that that's added our discount percentage column in there. Now finally, what I want to do is I want to add in a custom column. I'm going to call that my pounds. I want that to be my discount percentage, and I can multiply that by my total sales and hit OK. And you can see then that's created the discount pound amount. And again, you can see all of our steps have just been captured here on the side. So finally, what we're going to do is if I just go back to home, we're going to close and load to. We're going to load it to a table, a new worksheet, and hit OK. And you can see data query has loaded up that new table with all of our new columns and calculations in there. To add a new row in here, let's say that was at count A, say 100, price, let's say 10. Should update our table in here. So I hit refresh. Bingo. That looks good. Now, once our data is loaded into a table, we can then go and insert any kind of pivot table and do any further analysis that we want to do off the back of that. But another option is to load our data into a power pivot. So a power pivot is pretty much like a pivot table on steroids. So you can add several million lines, and you can also add different tables that you can create relationships off the back of and create pivots that combine multiple tables. So to change how we load that data into a power pivot, what we're going to do is just select anywhere within our table, then go up to query, load to, and instead of table, we're going to change that to only create correct connection, and we're going to add this to the data model and then hit OK. And then just hit OK to that. Now to view it in Power Pivot, we'll just go up to the top of our ribbon where we've got Power Pivot. Now that may not be enabled in your version of Excel. So to do that, what you'll need to do is just go over to File, go to Options, then go to Add-ins, then select COM Add-ins, and then click Go. And you just need to make sure that your Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel is ticked, and then OK. Once you've done that, you can just select on the top of the ribbon on Power Pivot and across to the left where we've got this kind of green database icon. Underneath that says Data Model. So we just select that, and this is where our table has been loaded into. So it's almost like a separate background table within Excel, and this is effectively our data model. Now, like I've said, the beauty of this is that these tables can go into the several millions of lines, and it doesn't affect your performance in Excel too much. So really useful for if you are a data analyst. Now, if I go across to the right here and select diagram view, we can see this is our table here with all of our fields within here. Now, if we wanted to, we could load up another table and then just create a relationship between different dimensions in different tables. That would then allow us to create a pivot table with several different tables, and it gives us great options for reporting and particularly useful for data analysis. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.